So, as you've seen and as you've probably heard mentioned as well, the quality of the program that's put together is really quite spectacular. This is much more than just having a look around and syncing up of schedules saying who's available to speak. It is really a search and a curation for the right kind of speakers for the time that we're in as well. So coming up next is a very interesting piece. It is a fireside conversation. And in the sports of Formula One, Red Bull Racing, Honda, and all their technical partners faced a very interesting year, to say the least, in 2020, filled with uncertainty, disruption, ever-changing timelines, a complete shift from the traditional working model to a remote working model. Red Bull Racing Honda quickly adapted, learned, and arguably benefited from the restrictions put in place by both Formula One, the UK government, and many others. Learn how Red Bull Racing Honda relied on their innovation partners such as Citrix to provide the right tools and infrastructure to enable their teams to stay agile. Coming up immediately after this is going to be an online learning experience as well, where we are going to go live for a tour of their facility. But first up, here is a dialogue that was recorded with the schedules of all those who could at the same time. Moderated by Rama from CIO Academy Asia. On the line will be Zoe Chilton, Head of Technical Partnerships, Red Bull Racing Honda, as well as Parag Arora, Area Vice President, Southeast Asia, Korea, and India for Citrix. So without much further ado, can we roll that piece of video?
Hi everyone, I'm Rama from CIO Academy Asia, and I'm really glad to be hosting this special dialogue with the Red Bull Racing Honda and Citrix on the topic, navigating a season of challenges and opportunities, real-time collaboration at the cutting edge. I'd like to introduce the speakers for this dialogue, starting with Zoe Chilton, the Head of Technical Partnerships from Red Bull Racing Honda. And we also have Parag Arora, who is the Area Vice President, Citrix Southeast Asia, Korea, and India. Now, without further ado, let's get this dialogue going. Let me start first with Zoe. Zoe, why don't you share with us some overview of your role within the Red Bull Racing Honda with Citrix?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, first of all. It's really wonderful to be here. So yeah, my role is really quite unique and quite interesting, I guess, in terms of Formula One. We have, as a business, lots and lots of really critical, we call them innovation partners or technical partners, like Citrix, that are helping us to optimize our business performance, both on the track and off the track. So my role is really to manage relationships with those businesses and ensure that we're getting the optimum performance, the optimum, sort of really leveraging all the technology offerings that Citrix brings to the table and that all of those other partners bring to the table, and looking for as many opportunities across the business as possible to implement that technology. So with Citrix, we've actually worked together for 10 years now, just over 10 years, in fact. And we sort of solidify that into a partnership, formally as a partnership a few years ago. But it's been incredible, the journey that we've been on together, and hopefully we can cover a little bit of that shortly.
Parag, why don't you share with us your role as well? And
thank you for getting me on this conversation. And probably my role is not as exciting as yours, Zoe. So as you mentioned, I basically manage Citrix business in Southeast Asia, Korea, and India. But I think the things which I really care about is to make sure that our customers like Red Bull, they are really leveraging our solutions to help their business, and they're successful with what they're doing with us. So a lot of my time is spent, along with, of course, the business elements, is really to make sure that we deliver the value for our customers and we make things happen as they're supposed to happen.
Thanks, Parag. But there's a fair bit of tango, I'm sure, between what you do and what Zoe does, right? So maybe I'll start off with Zoe. Zoe, we know that the 2020 and 2021 season has been filled with many challenges, right? So can you share with us how you leverage Citrix technology to overcome some of these challenges, and how have you been pushing collaboration, as they say, from on-track operations, the pit wall, the data center in garage, to the off-track operations, example, the ops room in the factory, and talk about the team management and also some of the drivers. Yeah, go ahead, Zoe.
It's probably worth sort of explaining, in the sort of past 18 months, most people's businesses have gone through some really seismic changes, and we are absolutely no different. Our sport absolutely ground to a halt last season, fairly early doors. In fact, we didn't even make it to our first race. So we had a really fascinating scenario where we have, hundreds of engineers here that are using Citrix in their day-to-day jobs, but they're using it from a desk, somewhere here in the factory. We were using, for example, one perfect example is a lot of our designers in our design office are using Citrix-powered CAD machines because they're much sort of cheaper and easier for us to upgrade regularly. So we don't give them a physical desk workstation. We actually give them a virtual workstation that we can then change the spec and upgrade whenever we need to. But it's great because it meant when they suddenly had to go and work from home, we could give them, a fairly simple laptop, and they could go and run some really high-powered CAD machines effectively from home, from their kitchen table. They could use peripherals. They could use their, Spaceball, which is like the special piece of desktop gear that they use to move the CAD models around. So we went from having, usually in an average race week, we have sort of 30 to 40 off-site users of Citrix, which will be some of our key personnel trackside that are supporting the race, that are sort of, working on data that's back here in the factory, for example. So rather than transporting all of the information, the spreadsheets, the data that they need on their laptops, they will be accessing it remotely using Citrix. And we went from having those sort of 30 or 40 core users to suddenly 300 or 400 offsite users in the case of a couple of days. So we were very fortunate, actually, that we were so well set up and sort of well embedded with the Citrix team and the Citrix product that we were able to sort of flip that switch and make that change very, very quickly.
Parag, it seems as though the F1 really epitomizes the practice of what they call remote workspaces, right? So what do you think are some of the lessons that we can learn from what Zoe has shared in terms of how you can apply it to other organizations from different industries?
One of the key things we've seen in the last 18 months is, like our customers like Red Bull, everybody's saying, how do we really get the speed of this change to be enabled by Citrix? At the same time, don't compromise security and don't compromise my user experience. And this has been our journey last 18 months. A lot of our customers, who've been really migrating from their existing Citrix deployments to a Citrix workspace kind of a deployment, which really enables them to rapidly scale for more users, rapidly embrace applications and services running on any cloud, anywhere, and at the same time, making sure that everybody's securely from a device perspective or network perspective. So I think this has been a rapid shift in 18 months, and I think, and we've been really busy working with customers, in this journey of transformation.
Thank you very much, Parag, for sharing with us about your relationship with between Citrix and Honda, Red Bull. And, maybe like to get Zoe to elaborate more, right, on the partnership at the engineering level with access to thought leaders developing new products, as well as people who help the team implement new technologies and also productize it, right? So can you share with us what are some of the key areas of development that has taken shape over the last 12 months?
We previously had quite a paper-based system, but it was quite an email-based system. So you had, a big supply chain sending in things like, reporting on components that were in manufacture off-site, and they would be sending in sort of interim reports or maybe photographs or bits of data that would help feed into our systems. Mm-hmm. But they would just send them by email to one person that they know, right? Which is not very helpful because it doesn't mean that information is available to everybody straight away. So what we did was actually work with Citrix to build an app that we made available to our suppliers so that they could directly access and upload in a secure way all of those key pieces of documentation into our on-site PLM systems. Mm. So we were able to then just give that information to all the relevant people internally at the same time, in real time. And if you imagine, let's say a component that's got a long lead time has had an imperfection in its manufacture process, and they're sending a non-conformance report saying, is this acceptable? Can you still work with it? Or do we need to start again? The difference between that going to one person and having to be passed around so that they can review it versus sending it to the system so that everybody is aware of it at the same time and we can react to it in real time is massive. And it enables us to maintain a very tight just-in-time delivery process, which is what we aim for in every single component.
So, Parag, would you like to just add on to what Zoe has just said? It seems that, the Formula One seems to be really pushing the limits in terms of, stretching the technologies that you have available for use. Yeah, please go ahead, Parag.
Absolutely. And I think that's been a very interesting experience we also had. In fact, I'll just give an example of a company called Srin & Kim. They are one of the large lawyer firms in Korea, and they've been using Citrix for again many years. Like Red Bull, Honda, and most of the lawyers would make sure that they log on Citrix and they are able to access data. I think come pandemic, I think the demand changed for them, and of course, as they moved to the cloud, all their workloads, they said, hey, how can we really bring in more automation into our workflows? And then that's where they kind of embraced the share file solution of Citrix and really integrating their workflows in their applications and their work environment. And interestingly, again, like Red Bull, they also did some interesting work with micro app integration. To really make sure that, how do our lawyers who are busy executives or busy individuals, how can we save their time where they don't need to go and log into multiple applications, so how can we use kind of micro app integration process so that once you are into a Citrix workspace platform, then you have access to all the applications that you need to access. And not just the access element, it's also about how do we automate and guide you to use the platform. So that how do you kind of make it intuitive? You know what action should be taken, and how can you fundamentally make your people more productive?
Zoe, after this, we are going to have like a walkthrough, with the virtual factory. Maybe you can give us a sneak preview of what we're going to see in terms of some of the Citrix touch points that's being showcased.
Absolutely. So I won't spoil it for you, but I know that my colleague Jack is going to do a fantastic job showing you around our tour of the factory virtually. It's the next best thing you can do to coming and physically having a walk around. So I think you'll really, really enjoy it. And if any of you do ever get the chance to visit us here in the UK, please do come and have the real thing, because it's definitely, better to see it in the flesh and be able to walk around it. But with what's really fascinating, and I'm sure you'll get this from the tour that Jack's going to give you, is just how many touch points there are around the factory, how many different ways in which we use Citrix in our day-to-day. It's not just improving performance in our design office, it's also in our CFD process, it's also in our R&D and testing facilities, it's in our paint shop, anything, machine shop. There are team members all over our factory that have touch points with this business, and we really couldn't do what we do in terms of pushing the car out and getting on track every weekend without the support of partners like Citrix.
So Parag, any last few words from you before we close this dialogue session?
Well, I think thank you for this opportunity and really insightful conversations and I think, like you mentioned and as Zoe mentioned, I think the technology from Citrix and all other IT solutions is all about how much more you can pull and how much more you can leverage them. And I think, again, for us, the focus remains, how do we create more use cases? How do we create more value? And I look forward to my journey with my customers like Red Bull moving forward.